"Do not rescue us," Claire Bennett said, staring through the cracked observation window. "Save the evidence." The emergency lights washed the research shuttle in dull red, turning every face inside the cabin pale and unfamiliar. Outside, a storm rolled across Neralis in slow, copper-colored waves, pressing hard against the glass with winds strong enough to shake the hull. Something stood beyond the reach of the landing lights. Claire could not see its body, only the shadow it cast when lightning moved behind it. 3 knocks sounded against the metal. Slow, evenly spaced. Then silence. Lieutenant Marcus Reed tightened his grip on the back of the pilot's seat. He was 41, broad-shouldered, calm under pressure, and currently doing a poor job of pretending his injured leg did not hurt. "Tell me that was debris," he said. Claire kept her eyes on the window. Debris does not wait for an answer. Across the cabin, Princess Lyra Vale drew her silver cloak closer around her shoulders. Faint blue lines beneath her skin brightened whenever she was afraid, and right now they glowed along her neck like cold fire. "The Varkesh are not capable of symbolic communication," she said. "That is what the Institute taught us." "The Institute taught you a lot of convenient things," Claire replied. The knocks came again. 3. Pause. 3. Marcus glanced toward the emergency transmitter. "Our signal is still being blocked." "Not completely." Claire leaned over the console and adjusted the analog frequency dial by hand. Static filled the cabin, rough and sharp, then cleared just enough for High Curator Malvek's voice to come through. "Dr. Bennett, your situation is regrettable. Confirm that the Varkesh is the dominant apex predator of Neralis, and the rescue team will be authorized." Claire looked at the dark shape outside. Malvek sounded relaxed. Too relaxed. Like a man asking someone to sign a form before handing back the keys to their own house. "You stranded 4 people in a storm to settle a scientific argument?" Marcus asked. Malvek ignored him. "The classification requires a human expert's confirmation. Nothing more." Claire felt anger rise in her chest, hot and immediate. But she had learned years ago that anger was useful only after it stopped choosing her words. She pressed the transmit key. "Which apex predator do you mean?" There was a brief pause on the channel. "The Varkesh, obviously." Claire watched the shadow tilt its head. "That is interesting," she said. "Because the Varkesh outside our shuttle is not trying to get in." Lyra stepped closer to the window. "Then what is it doing?" Another flash of lightning crossed the valley. For half a second, they saw the creature clearly. Nearly 8 feet tall, 6-limbed, armored along the spine, one forelimb raised toward the hull. It knocked again, not with claws, with the flat side of its hand. 3 times. Claire slowly turned toward the rear display, where a topographic map showed 3 identical signal patterns moving through the forest, each separated by almost a mile. Her throat tightened. She had seen this rhythm before, carved into trees near the abandoned research station. Malvek's voice returned, colder now. "Dr. Bennett, give the confirmation." Claire released the transmit key without answering. Marcus watched her face. "What did you figure out?" She lowered the cabin lights, and the Varkesh outside immediately stopped knocking. In the sudden darkness, something deeper in the forest answered with the same 3-beat pattern. Then another answered from the ridge. Then another from beneath the ground. Claire leaned close to the transmitter and spoke quietly. "Malvek is not afraid of what is standing outside." A low sound traveled through the shuttle floor, too deep to be heard clearly, but strong enough to rattle the coffee cup beside the controls. "He is afraid of whatever taught it to knock." 2 days earlier, Claire Bennett had stepped off the council shuttle with one duffel bag, a field jacket, and a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Neralis looked harmless from the landing platform. Blue-green forests stretched to the horizon, mist drifted between silver cliffs, and the air smelled faintly like rain on hot pavement. Princess Lyra Vale waited beside the reception gate with 3 officials from the Institute. She was taller than Claire by nearly a foot, her pale blue skin marked by thin lines of light that moved along her temples when she smiled. "Dr. Bennett," Lyra said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming on short notice." Claire shook it. Short notice usually means somebody ignored a problem until it got expensive. Lyra glanced toward the officials. That is not entirely inaccurate. High Curator Malvek stood behind her in a dark ceremonial coat, his posture rigid and his expression carefully polite. He had narrow silver eyes and the calm confidence of a man who had spent years speaking only to people required to agree with him. Human humor, he said. A defensive response to uncertainty. Claire took a sip of coffee, regretted it, and lowered the cup. Sometimes it is just bad coffee. Malvek began walking before anyone dismissed them. The others followed through a glass corridor overlooking the forest. 3 survey teams have disappeared within the southern preserve, he explained. The evidence points to the Varkesh. 8 feet tall, when fully raised, 6 primary limbs, thermal vision, reinforced dermal plating, and a documented hunting radius of nearly 12 miles. A wall display showed a dark armored creature moving between trees. Malvek paused the footage as it turned toward the camera. The perfect apex predator. Claire studied the image. Where are the bodies? Consumed or removed? You do not know which. Malvek's eyes tightened. The outcome is the same. Not to an ecologist. He switched to another image showing an abandoned camp. Tents stood open. Equipment remained neatly stacked. Food containers were untouched. Claire moved closer to the display. Nothing was dragged. Nothing was scattered. The Varkesh kills to establish dominance. That is a convenient answer. Malvek faced her. You were invited to confirm our findings, not challenge the competence of this institute. Claire felt the old pressure settle behind her ribs. Years earlier in Alaska, she had accepted a convenient answer about a set of tracks. Daniel Price had trusted her judgment. He had not come home. Since then, neat explanations made her nervous. You invited me because your experts are missing, she said. That means challenging your findings is the job. Lyra hid a brief smile. Lieutenant Marcus Reed did not. He stood near the security door, broad-shouldered and watchful, scanning every exit while pretending not to listen. Malvek resumed walking. Tomorrow, you will enter the preserve with a limited team. You will observe the Varkesh in its natural environment and provide the classification the Council requires. Claire stopped at the next display. It showed one of the missing researchers walking alone into the trees. No struggle, no pursuit. The scientist simply set down his equipment, turned toward the forest, and disappeared between the trunks. Play that again, Claire said. Malvek kept walking. There is nothing useful in it. Claire reached for the controls herself. The image restarted. This time she noticed the researcher tilt his head before he moved, as though someone had called his name from beyond the camera's range. Then the hallway lights flickered. Every display along the wall went black except one. A message appeared in plain English. Claire Bennett, come outside. Marcus stepped between her and the glass. Lyra's glowing markings faded. Malvek stared at the screen, and for the first time, his confidence slipped. From somewhere far below the corridor, 3 slow knocks echoed through the building. The message vanished before anyone touched the controls. A second later, the corridor lights returned, bright and ordinary, as though nothing had happened. Marcus checked the security panel beside the glass. No external connection. No maintenance access. Whoever wrote that was already inside the network. Malvek recovered quickly. A technical malfunction. Claire looked down through the corridor floor. The forest canopy moved nearly 200 feet below them, dark leaves folding and unfolding in the wind. Technical malfunctions usually do not know my name. Lyra stepped toward Malvek. Postpone the survey. The council delegation arrives in 48 hours, he replied. Delay would imply that the Institute has lost control of its own preserve. 3 teams are missing, Claire said. I think that ship sailed. Malvek's expression hardened. The expedition begins at sunrise. By morning, Claire understood exactly how badly he wanted the mission to proceed. Their equipment had been reduced to 2 medical kits, 3 days of water, a compact shelter, and a survey drone with no defensive systems. Marcus examined the supplies on the loading table. No emergency beacon. The preserve has complete sensor coverage, Malvek said. A beacon is unnecessary. Marcus held up an old-fashioned compass. And this? A courtesy to the human preference for primitive redundancies. Marcus slipped it into his jacket. I prefer tools that still work when someone decides the network needs another malfunction. Claire checked the field maps. Large sections of the southern preserve had been marked as inaccessible due to terrain instability. The missing teams had vanished near the edges of those same blank zones. She folded the map and placed it in her pack. Nico Sar, a young Institute technician assigned to operate the drone, watched her with open unease. His narrow green fingers shook as he secured the equipment case. "The Varkesh does not approach the transit route," he said. "Not during daylight." Claire tightened one shoulder strap. "How often have you been inside the preserve?" "Never." "Then you do not know that." Nico looked embarrassed, but Claire softened her voice. "That was not an insult. Second-hand certainty gets people hurt." Lyra arrived wearing practical field clothing instead of her royal robes, though the silver crest at her collar still identified her rank. Malvek immediately objected. "Your presence is ceremonial. You are not required to enter." "Then my presence will be useful for once," Lyra said. The access gate opened with a low mechanical hum. Warm air rolled into the staging chamber, carrying the smell of wet soil and something sweet enough to make Claire's teeth ache. Beyond the gate, a narrow trail disappeared beneath trees taller than downtown office buildings. Marcus studied the tree line. "Quiet." Nico looked confused. "The preserve contains more than 12,000 documented animal species." "That is his point," Claire said. There were no wing beats, no insect calls, no movement in the brush. An entire forest had gone still to listen. They entered anyway. The gate sealed behind them, and the noise returned all at once. Calls rolled through the canopy. Leaves shook. Something small raced through the undergrowth. For the first mile, nothing followed them. Then Claire noticed a second set of footprints beside the trail. Each print was almost 18 inches long, pressed deep into the mud by something heavy. Marcus crouched to examine them. "Varkesh." "Maybe." Claire touched the edge of one track. Rainwater had collected inside it, but the surrounding soil remained dry. The print had been made before the rain and somehow preserved afterward. "That does not make sense," Nico whispered. The survey drone chimed above them. Its display showed movement on their left, then on their right, then directly behind them. 3 large heat signatures were pacing the group from nearly 50 yards away. Lyra reached for Claire's arm. "Malvek said there was only one in this sector." Claire looked at the map, then at the trees. High above them, bark peeled away from a trunk, revealing a spiral pattern cut into the wood. 3 marks. A pause. 3 more. The drone suddenly turned on its own and flew deeper into the forest. Nico grabbed the controller. "I am not doing that." A voice came through the drone speaker. "Calm. Male. American." Claire stopped breathing. "Claire," the voice said. "You left me here." It was Daniel Price. The drone hovered between the trees, its speaker carrying Daniel Price's voice with the same tired warmth Claire remembered from Alaska. "You left me here." Marcus stepped in front of her and raised the emergency signal launcher. "That thing is not Daniel." "I know," Claire said, though her body had not received the message. Her pulse raced, and for one dangerous second the forest smelled like snow, pine sap, and the cheap coffee Daniel used to make before sunrise. The drone drifted backward. "Claire, I found the trail. Come see." Nico tightened both hands around the controller. "It is rejecting every command." "Shut it down." "I cannot." Claire pulled the battery release code from memory and called out the sequence. Nico entered it. The screen flashed red. "Access denied." The drone turned and vanished through the undergrowth. Lyra started after it. Claire caught her sleeve. Nobody follows a voice they cannot see. A cry came from ahead, this time in Nico's voice. "Help me." The real Nico went pale. The 3 heat signatures began closing in. Marcus pointed toward a rise about 80 yards east. "Higher ground. Move." They left the trail and pushed through waist-high ferns as the forest erupted around them. Branches snapped on both sides. A dark shape crossed behind the trees, fast enough to blur. Marcus fired a bright signal flare over the group. White light flooded the canopy. For an instant, Claire saw 2 Varkesh pacing them, their armored backs low, their 6 limbs moving with unsettling precision. Neither charged. They were steering the group. "They want us going east," she said. "Good," Marcus replied. "East has rocks. East is where they want us." The ground shifted beneath Lyra's boots. Claire heard the soft crack a moment too late. "Back up." The forest floor dropped. Lyra slid toward a widening gap as soil and roots folded into darkness. Marcus lunged, caught her wrist, and pulled her toward solid ground, but the edge gave way beneath him. He disappeared to his waist and struck the side of the pit hard. Claire and Nico grabbed his jacket and dragged him clear. Marcus rolled onto his back, breathing through clenched teeth. A pale length of broken root had torn through the outer layer of his pants near the thigh. There was no visible blood, but his leg would not support his weight. "Tell me that is nothing," Lyra said. Marcus tried to stand, failed, and sat back down. "It is inconvenient." Claire dropped beside him and opened the medical kit. Her hands shook as she checked the injury. She had led them off the trail. She had heard Daniel's voice and lost focus. Different forest. Same mistake. Marcus caught her wrist. "Do not go somewhere else right now. I chose this route. Then choose the next one better." A low clicking sound came from the trees. One Varkesh stepped into view less than 30 feet away. Lyra froze. Nico reached for the flare launcher, but Claire pushed the barrel down. The creature could have crossed the distance in seconds. Instead, it looked at Marcus, then lowered its head toward the open pit. Claire followed its gaze. Far below, faint blue light moved through a web of roots. Not reflected light. Pulses. 3 bright flashes. A pause. 3 more. The Varkesh struck the ground once with its flat forelimb and backed away. "It is warning us," Lyra whispered. The soil beneath Marcus began to vibrate. Voices rose from the pit, dozens of them layered together, calling each member of the group by name. Then Daniel's voice came through clearly. "Claire, you finally found us." The roots below opened like a door. The roots below the pit moved apart without tearing, revealing a sloping tunnel lit by veins of blue light. Claire stared down at it, while Daniel's voice drifted upward. "You always hated unfinished work." Her stomach tightened. That was something he had said during their last field season, a private joke nobody on Neralis should have known. Marcus shifted against a tree and tested his injured leg. "We are not climbing into a hole because it sounds familiar." "Agreed," Claire said. Then she looked at the approaching Varkesh. The creature stood between them and the forest, not blocking escape so much as guarding the opening. Behind it, the other heat signatures circled at a distance. But staying here is no longer an option. Nico checked the drone controller again. The screen had changed. Instead of a map, it showed a single command. "Return to Central Station." "The Institute is trying to recall us," he said. Lyra leaned over his shoulder. "That is not a recall order. It is an evacuation code. For us. For the facility staff." Claire looked toward the distant ridge where the Institute towers rose above the trees. Small lights were already moving away from the complex. Shuttles. Malvek was pulling his people out while leaving the survey team inside. Marcus saw it too. "That answers one question." "Which one?" Lyra asked. "Whether he expected us to come back." A deep vibration rolled under their feet. Trees swayed even though the wind had stopped. The Varkesh gave a low warning call and moved closer to the pit. Claire made the choice. They secured Marcus between 2 support straps, and with Lyra on one side and Nico on the other, they lowered him into the tunnel. The slope was damp but stable, reinforced by roots woven tighter than steel cable. Claire entered last. The opening sealed above them, shutting out the daylight. "That is comforting," Marcus said. "You wanted a roof," Claire replied. "I wanted one with an exit." They followed the blue pulses deeper underground. The air grew warmer, carrying the scent of soil, rain, and something faintly electrical. Along the walls, translucent fibers brightened when they passed, as if the tunnel was tracking them. Nico brushed one by accident. He gasped and pulled his hand away. "I saw the station." "A memory?" Claire asked. "Not mine." He described white laboratories, restrained Varkesh, and Institute workers placing metal devices beneath their armor. Lyra stopped walking. Malvek told the council the animals were never captured. The tunnel opened into a chamber wider than a football field. Roots descended from the ceiling in thick columns, joining a glowing web that spread across the floor. Embedded within it were pieces of equipment, clothing, and identification badges from the missing survey teams. Claire stepped toward the nearest badge. Daniel's voice came from every direction. "Not dead. Remembered." Images flooded her mind without warning. Scientists entering the forest. Malvek's technicians driving pain signals into the Varkesh. The animals fighting the commands until the implants forced them toward the survey camps. Then came something larger. Awareness spread across roots, spores, insects, and every living thing beneath the canopy. The forest was not home to a hidden intelligence. The forest was the intelligence. Claire dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by thousands of overlapping sensations. Marcus reached for her, but she raised a hand. "Wait." The network was showing her what Malvek had built beneath the central station. a sealed canister connected to the root system. Lyra saw it through the link and whispered, "That is a sterilization device." "No," Nico said. "Those are illegal." Claire forced herself upright. "That is why he needs our report. If we classify the Varkesh as an uncontrollable apex threat, the Council can approve ecological cleansing without an investigation." Lyra's face went still as she examined the authorization code visible on the canister. Her glowing markings dimmed until they nearly vanished. "That signature belongs to my father." Before Claire could answer, Malvek's voice filled the chamber through the abandoned drone. "Princess, step away from the human. Dr. Bennett, activate the device, and your team will be extracted." Claire looked at the living network beneath her feet. "You are not trying to kill a predator." Malvek's silence confirmed it. Then the countdown appeared across every glowing root in the chamber. 10 minutes. He had already armed the device. The countdown dropped to 9 minutes as the chamber shifted around them. Roots pulled away from the floor, revealing a narrow maintenance conduit leading toward the central station. Malvek's voice returned through the drone. "There is still a way out, Dr. Bennett. Activate the device, and I will open the western access gate." Claire looked at the glowing canister in the shared memory of the network. "You already evacuated your staff. Responsible leadership requires preparation. Responsible leadership does not use people as bait." Malvek gave a quiet sigh, almost disappointed. "You are thinking emotionally. Neralis contains mineral deposits capable of powering half the compact for a century. One distributed organism cannot be allowed to obstruct the future of billions." Lyra stepped toward the drone. "You falsified the survey records. Your father understood necessity." Malvek sent a file to her wrist display. The royal seal appeared above a chain of authorization orders, each one signed by the late King Vale. Lyra stared at the screen without blinking. He approved containment studies, not extermination. He approved results. The difference hit her harder than the accusation. Claire saw it in the way the light beneath Lyra's skin faded. Malvek was not simply threatening her reputation. He was forcing her to choose between the truth and the memory of the man who had raised her. "Princess," Marcus said, his voice strained but steady, "whatever your father signed, you did not sign it." Lyra looked toward him. "My government benefited from it. Then decide what it benefits from next." The countdown reached 7 minutes. Nico knelt beside the drone and opened its service panel. "I can reach the station network through this relay, but the Institute has locked every administrative channel." Claire studied the root conduit. The forest reached their screens before. Can it reach the lock? Nico glanced at the living fibers surrounding them. "I do not know how to ask it." Daniel's voice came from the chamber. Do not ask." Claire closed her eyes and placed her palm against the nearest root. The contact filled her mind with flashes of human systems, station doors, power grids, and frightened animals under white lights. She focused on one memory, a red emergency lever in the station control room. Mechanical, independent, built for use when software failed. The network answered with a path of blue light running into the conduit. Marcus noticed it first. "Looks like we have directions." They moved fast. Lyra and Nico supported Marcus while Claire followed the pulsing route through the tight passage. Behind them, the roots sealed shut, buying time from whatever Malvek might send after them. Halfway to the station, the conduit shook. A blast door dropped from the ceiling and slammed into the floor inches ahead of Claire. The blue path ended. Malvek's image appeared on a small wall terminal. "You continue to mistake adaptability for superiority." Claire searched the corridor. No vents. No alternate route. "I never said humans were superior. Your species always implies it." "No. We imply that plans change." Marcus took the old compass from his jacket and held it near the wall. The needle snapped hard to the left. "Power line," he said. Nico understood. He removed the drone battery, connected 2 leads, and overloaded the magnetic lock. The blast door lifted 6 inches before the emergency motor failed. Lyra dropped to the floor and crawled through first. Nico pushed Marcus after her. Claire followed as the door shuttered above her back. They emerged inside the abandoned station control room with 4 minutes remaining. The manual lever stood across the room. Claire ran toward it. Every monitor came alive at once, showing Malvek inside an evacuation shuttle high above the preserve. "You are too late," he said. "The lever no longer controls the device." Claire stopped. The station schematics changed. The sterilization canister was not waiting for activation. It had already released microscopic carriers into the groundwater. The countdown marked the time until they reached the central root network. Malvek smiled for the first time. You thought this was a bomb. Claire stared at the spreading map. It is an infection. Outside the control room windows, the Varkesh began calling across the forest, one after another, as the blue light beneath the trees started to go dark. Claire watched the dark lines spread across the station map and felt the room tilt around her. The carriers were moving through groundwater channels at nearly 30 miles per hour, faster than anything they could reach on foot. Nico pulled up the environmental controls. The purification grid can filter local reservoirs, but not the deep network. Marcus lowered himself into a chair, one hand braced against his injured leg. Then we do not filter it. We stop the water. Across an entire forest? Lyra asked. Humans have done dumber things with dams, Claire said. She studied the terrain display. Neralis was not a single watershed. Hundreds of underground streams fed one central basin beneath the oldest section of the preserve. If the carriers reached it, the infection would spread everywhere. They had less than 3 minutes. Claire opened the station maintenance controls and found the emergency geothermal system. The Institute used it to keep research pipes from freezing during the planet's long winter. Can we heat the groundwater? Nico leaned closer. Enough to destroy the carriers, yes, but it would also damage the root network. How much damage? I cannot calculate that quickly. The blue lights outside continued fading. Claire pressed her palm against the console, wishing the forest could hear her through metal and glass. A voice came from the station speakers. Daniel again, but weaker. Cold fire. Claire looked up. What does that mean? The display changed without Nico touching it. A chain of underground chambers appeared north of the station, each filled with pale mineral deposits. Marcus recognized the pattern. Those are pressure pockets. Nico shook his head. Methane analog. Highly unstable. Claire understood. The forest was showing them another option. The mineral gas could be released into the infected channels, starving the carriers of the chemical reaction they needed to activate. It might work. It might also poison half the valley. It is asking us to trust it, Lyra said. No, Claire replied. It is asking whether we trust ourselves. Malvek appeared on the main screen from his shuttle. You cannot save it. Even if you interrupt the first release, there are secondary canisters beneath every major research site. Claire stared at him. You plan for the council to investigate. I plan for certainty. He transmitted the locations. 12 red markers appeared across the preserve. It was not a confession. It was a victory lap. Marcus gave Claire a tired look. He really likes hearing himself talk. Most men with secret weapons do. Claire opened every communication channel at once. Malvek's live feed, the carrier map, the authorization records, and the secondary device locations began uploading to the council relay. His expression changed. Stop that transmission. Why? Claire asked. You said you wanted certainty. Lyra placed her royal seal over the data stream, granting it diplomatic priority. The signal escaped the Institute firewall. Malvek cut the connection, but the upload continued through the station's weather satellites. Outside, the nearest Varkesh raised its head and called into the storm. The forest answered. Trees along the northern basin folded their leaves at once, and the blue root lights shifted away from the infected channels. The entire ecosystem was isolating itself. It is cutting off part of its own network, Nico whispered. Claire felt the weight of that choice. The forest was willing to lose memories, territory, perhaps entire sections of itself, to protect what remained. Humanity had done the same in burning cities, flooded mines, quarantined towns, and sinking ships. Not because sacrifice came naturally, because sometimes survival arrived dressed as grief. Claire activated the pressure valves. Pale gas rushed into the underground streams, and the red infection map slowed. For 1 second, every marker stopped. Then 11 turned gray. The 12th remained red. It was directly beneath the shuttle launch field. Marcus looked at Malvek's disappearing signal. He kept one close. Claire watched the red marker rise toward the surface. Not close, she said. He took it with him. Above the clouds, Malvek's shuttle changed course toward the arriving council fleet. Malvek's shuttle climbed toward the council fleet with the final canister hidden inside its cargo bay. On the station display, the red marker moved steadily upward, leaving the forest behind. Nico opened a flight control channel, but the shuttle rejected every command. He has locked out remote navigation, he said. Lyra stepped to the communications console. Then I will order the fleet to hold him. She transmitted her royal identification and demanded an immediate quarantine. The reply came back less than 10 seconds later. Request denied. High Curator Malvek has declared a biological emergency and assumed temporary authority under compact law. Marcus let out a quiet breath. He wrote the rule for this, did he not? His office wrote most of them, Lyra said. Claire watched the council ships arrange themselves into a protective formation around Malvek. From their point of view, he was the respected official escaping a contaminated planet. The people trying to stop him were trapped inside the preserve he had labeled unstable. He does not need the canister to infect the fleet, Claire said. He needs them to believe he saved it. Malvek appeared across the main screen. Behind him, the shuttle cabin looked clean, quiet, and perfectly controlled. Princess Lyra, your distress has been noted. Dr. Bennett's exposure has clearly affected your judgment. Return to the station and await medical isolation. Claire leaned toward the microphone. You put the last carrier on your own shuttle. An absurd accusation. Then open your cargo telemetry. He smiled faintly. You have no authority to request it. No, Claire said. But the forest does. Malvek's smile disappeared. The station lights dimmed as the Neralis network reached through its old connection to the Institute satellites. It could not control the shuttle, but it remembered every machine that had entered the preserve, every maintenance code carried through its routes, every vibration produced by the launch field. A new image appeared on the council feed, Malvek's cargo manifest, followed by internal sensor records showing the concealed canister. His voice sharpened. That data is fabricated. Lyra placed her seal beneath it. Then submit to inspection. The lead council cruiser finally broke formation and ordered Malvek to reduce speed. He did not. Instead, his shuttle turned toward the fleet's central relay ship. Marcus stared at the trajectory. He is going to force a docking. Once he reaches their network, he can erase the evidence, Nico said. Claire looked at the weather controls, then at the storm still turning above Neralis. The fleet hovered just inside the upper atmosphere, close enough to maintain a stable signal with the station, close enough to feel the planet's magnetic field. Can the satellites focus the storm charge? She asked. Nico hesitated. Not as a weapon. I do not need a weapon. I need static. He understood. Together they redirected the weather satellites into a narrow corridor between Malvek and the relay ship. Lyra warned the fleet to shield its systems. Malvek ignored the warning and accelerated. Lightning spread across the clouds in a silent white sheet. His shuttle vanished from the tactical display for 3 seconds. When it returned, its navigation lock was gone and its engines had dropped to emergency power. The council cruiser caught it in a tractor field before it could drift into the relay ship. Marcus looked at Claire. That was your plan. That was the part of the plan I had time for. Malvek's image returned, flickering through interference. For the first time, he looked afraid. You have no idea what you are protecting, he said. That organism copied human memories. It called you by the voice of a dead man. It is already inside you. Claire considered the words carefully. The forest had shown her Daniel, but it had also shown her the truth when Malvek had hidden it. Maybe, she said, but it never lied about what it wanted. Council security boarded the disabled shuttle and secured the canister. The fleet ordered Malvek detained pending a full inquiry. Lyra closed her eyes, but there was no relief in her face. The evidence had cleared the forest and exposed Malvek, yet one question remained. Claire turned toward the windows. Across the preserve, the blue lights were returning, branch by branch, like a city waking after a blackout. Then every speaker in the station came alive with the same quiet voice. Not Daniel's this time. Claire's. Human, it said. Why did you save us? Claire looked at the forest and realized the council was listening too. Claire stood before the open channel while her own voice echoed from every speaker in the station. Human, why did you save us? Nobody answered for her. The council fleet remained silent above Neralis, its officers listening from thousands of miles away. Lyra watched Claire with the same question in her eyes. Marcus sat nearby with his injured leg supported on a storage case, exhausted but alert. Nico kept both hands above the console, afraid that touching anything might interrupt the moment. Claire looked through the window at the forest. Blue light moved beneath the soil in slow waves. returning to valleys that had nearly gone dark. The Varkesh stood at the edge of the landing field, no longer hidden, their armored heads raised toward the station. "Because you asked for help," Claire said. The voice replied, "Others asked before." Images appeared across the monitors. Missing researchers entered laboratories. Captured animals struggled against restraints. Officials signed orders and looked away. The network had heard every promise made inside the institute, including the ones nobody intended to keep. "They called us dangerous," the forest said. "They called us property. They called us empty land." Lyra stepped beside Claire. The light beneath her skin trembled, but her voice did not. "My father allowed that." The council channel stirred with quiet objections, legal advisors warning her to wait for an inquiry. She ignored them. "His name will remain in the record," she continued. "So will mine. We will not hide what was done here." Malvek appeared on a smaller screen from the council detention room. His formal coat was gone, but his certainty remained. "Do not confuse regret with policy, Princess. The compact needs Neralis. One living system cannot outweigh billions of citizens." Claire turned toward him. "That is the trouble with men who measure everything. Eventually, they decide people are numbers too." Malvek leaned closer to the camera. "You protected an organism capable of entering your memories. It could become a threat greater than any predator your species has encountered." Claire thought of winter camps, emergency rooms, wildfire shelters, and the empty chair Daniel's family had left at Thanksgiving. Humanity had met creatures with teeth. It had met hunger, disease, loneliness, and fear. The worst things had never been the ones hiding in the dark. They were the ones people justified in daylight. "Danger is not the same as evil," she said. "You should know that by now." The council opened a formal vote. Neralis was recognized as a sovereign intelligence. Mining rights were suspended. The institute was placed under investigation. Malvek was removed from office pending trial, not because Claire defeated him, but because his own records left him nowhere to hide. Weeks later, Marcus left the medical center with a brace, a cane, and a complaint about hospital coffee. Nico joined the first diplomatic team assigned to communicate with the forest. Lyra returned home to face a government that might never forgive her for telling the truth. Claire stayed on Neralis. On her final morning before returning to Earth, she walked to the edge of the preserve alone. A Varkesh waited between the trees. It lowered its head, then tapped the ground 3 times. Claire tapped the metal railing 3 times in return. "Human," the forest said through the nearby field speaker. "Are you Apex Predator?" Claire smiled. "Some days we can barely organize a grocery store parking lot." The network paused, searching her memories for meaning. "Then why do others fear you?" Claire looked toward the sunrise spreading across the silver cliffs. "Because we have been prey. We have been predators. We know what both can become." The forest considered that answer. "Which are you now?" Claire thought of Malvek in custody, of Lyra choosing truth over a throne, and of Marcus dragging himself forward when stopping would have been easier. "Trying to be better," she said. The blue light beneath the trees brightened. Long after Claire returned to Earth, the official Neralis report kept one classification field deliberately blank. It did not name a dominant predator. It listed no species at the top. Instead, beneath a question that had shaped galactic law for centuries, Lyra added a single line. "Strength is not proven by what you can destroy. It is proven by what you choose to protect when destruction would be easier."